All right, so welcome back to the 1000 Ant Podcast. I'm Matt Schell, and I'm joined by Sam Eng, my partner at 1000 Ant, and we are back again to talk about indie game development, making games in Unity, and whatever else we feel like. Hi, Sam. How you doing?
Yeah, that's what we do.
It's what we do.
All three of those things.
Yeah, exactly. I had a topic to kick us off. Well, there's a couple things I wanted to, excuse me, a couple things I wanted to talk about. I want to get your advice on my cute space game. I'm struggling away. It's an absolutely painful process. I definitely want to get your input on that. And then I also want to talk about the new, the announcement for the Unity release. There's some stuff in there that I think is cool. Maybe we can start with that. Let me pull up this blog post, and then we can talk about that a little bit. I think if I do it, it's going to...
Unity release.
Yeah, I think, watch, it's going to mess up my video because it's going to block the camera. Hold on. Whoop. That's how you can see my file system blocking the... This is a serious professional production here, people. Look, there we go. We're white. And we'll move the browser out of the way. There we go. All right. So, yeah, there's the Unity 2020.2 beta that just got announced. Which I think is pretty interesting because it's got a lot of programmer features in it. And there's two that I am super excited about, and they're so small, but I just think that they're really great. One is that reorderable lists and arrays are now
they come
default.
Standard now.
Are now
finally
default. Major for all of you guys.
I mean, I've been using Odin for the last year or two, and it's been incredible.
Odin is amazing. I actually really like Odin. I started using it on the space game as well. Are you using... I basically just started using Odin's default, the way it redraws the inspector, and then I started using a few of the little attributes, like adding buttons and stuff. What are you using in Odin that you like?
I think Button is the killer app for me.
Bro,
just like, Button is so good.
Button! So for those who don't know, you could literally just put button in two square brackets above a function, and
there
then
it is.
Adds a function. It adds a button to the UI in the inspector that calls that function. Amazing! I literally use that all the time. That is like, bro, why doesn't Unity do that? That would be really, really. That's something Unity should just take from Odin. And I don't know. I saw a lot of people being like, you should just Unity should just acquire Odin and just make it standard. And I mean, you know,
it's not a bad idea.
Not a bad idea. Yeah. I think that I know that I saw, this was a couple years ago at Unite Amsterdam, Richard Fine, who is a developer at Unity, gave a talk about Unity's serialization system. And it's one of those gnarly things that's pretty deeply embedded in a lot of the way that Unity works. And so I think that refactoring it or changing it is a major undertaking. I don't know if there's any work. There's no mention of that in any of these.
There are
updates.
some serialization improvements that happened. We actually worked on some of the information for that. And for example, they improved generic serialization under the hood, which is great. Like now you can serialize generic types in, I think, 2019.4. So for example, if you have a list of like generic types, it can actually correctly deserialize it and serialize it into their the subclass types.
That's pretty interesting. So in your code, whatever the type is generic, but then
Well, you say you have like a list of animals, and then you put in like a horse, a cat, and a dog, like subclass types. It'll correctly deserialize into the horse, cat, and dog without you needing to like do any weird shit.
Like casting or...
Yeah, you don't have to do any of that anymore.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That is interesting. So that's cool. I mean, I feel like if we look at these release notes, there's like a major major focus on programming. So there's the two big ones: the reorderable lists, super simple but amazing, right? To have that in vanilla Unity, and then the this is so dumb, but it's just to me is great. Is that camera.main is no longer slow.
Wait, it's I thought they fixed that in 2019.4.10 or something.
It's in here as a where was it? Let me do a little find. Camera.main used to be a performance costly function to call. With this optimization, a dedicated list of objects with the main camera tag is maintained, and searching this list is almost instantaneous. So for those who don't know, if you tried to do camera.main, it was actually iterating over the whole scene. If you didn't cache that reference, it was actually searching the whole scene for the camera and ended up being a really slow call.
If you do that every frame, it's horrifying.
It's horrifying. It's really horrifying. And it's one of those things that you totally wouldn't think would be slow, but was. This was something that Ian Dundor shone a light on in his Unite talks and did a great job of talking about when it was an issue. But it was, again, for beginners and stuff, it was kind of gnarly. So the fact that that's now fixed, I feel like is great. And I'm happy to see, instead of announcing a new whatever graph or new big authoring tool, that this is what the release notes are looking like, that it's these kind of quality of life kind of fixes. And then also, I haven't really played with this yet, and I don't really know what it's going to exactly how it's going to affect life, and I think this is much more sensitive for people on really big projects, but they've made a lot of changes to the way compilation works, and so for example, zero change rebuilds in IL2 CPP platforms. If you make changes that don't involve code changes, for example, to material shaders or prefabs, IL2 CPP conversion from .NET assemblies to C++ will be skipped. So they've done a lot of stuff to avoid recompiling stuff that doesn't need to be recompiled, also with assembly definitions, and a few things like that, which I think is cool because it's very much like just that thing that's really the core loop of Unity, right? Which is entering play mode, making a change, recompiling. That is like the thing that most of us are doing, massively often, and so to speed up iteration time there, I feel like it's a great area of focus. So I'm actually really happy to see them doing that.
Yeah, under the hood, quality of life improvements are something that we really really are not sexy in any way,
right?
But it just makes the editor much easier to use, more fun to use.
Exactly.
All that.
Yeah. I totally agree, and I think it's cool. So, I always wanted, being a former Unity employee, I always wanted to dance around this a little bit. Now it's funny, now that I've not been there for, 6 months now, there's less and less confidential information that I know, so I don't really need to be careful. But I know that internally, right before GDC, this shift to focus on quality of life and stability was that was the big message for GDC. And then obviously GDC got canceled. So that kind of rollout of that message got a little bit blunted, right? But I think that there was a recognition internally at Unity that this was a direction that was really, that the community was looking for, right? And the developers were looking for. And that as much as people are excited to see big, sexy visual features, that this is actually stuff that is really affecting that core of people who are trying to have a business shipping games on the platform, right? So I think it's cool.
It does feel like Unity is finally starting back on the stability and performance and quality of life stuff, which makes you really, really happy. Same. I'm the type of person who was on 2017 LTS for the last 2 years. Yeah. And now Skate Story's on 2019 LTS. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm staying there. I'm not.
Yeah.
moving.
Cool. I mean, that's cool. I think that's also, there's also an interesting thing there I think that we're starting to see the LTS. One of the things announced in this blog post is that LTS is now the default download
Yeah, it's great.
which is great, right? So
Yeah.
it also, this is, because in our work at Thousand Ant, we do continue to work with Unity, making tutorials for them. And I think that one of the things that I always, when I was both doing this work now and when I was there as an employee, the fracturing of the ecosystem of all these different versions and all these different packages in terms of creating tutorials was very concerning, right? It's like, well, what version are you on? What package of what this, of what that, right? And I think that saying, okay, you know what, LTS is Unity, or LTS is kind of like the supported version of the Unity editor now, and focus on that, build on that, and having, I think there was a period where Unity was very much forward-facing, rushing to the cutting edge with a lot of stuff, and it's great that that work is happening, right? But then, first of all, not everybody needs that. If you're just making some kind of simple 2D mobile game, you definitely don't need a lot of that stuff, right? And then, so I'm happy. I feel like that's a really healthy direction for them, and I'm pretty encouraged to see that, and I'm encouraged to see that they're kind of like continuing with that. That the big announcement is like quality of life and stability and performance. That's like amazing,
I mean, I do think that LTS is, as a default, like such a great move. Like, I would recommend anyone to just use LTS just to avoid any little snags. Like, it's stable, it's proven. There's all these shiny features, but shiny things can cut you.
Yeah, exactly. Shiny things can be sharp, right? I think that also the interesting thing now is that with obviously some of these quality of life stuff that we're talking about won't be in the LTS until they said March is, which is not that 6 months away now.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. Yeah, and I'm happy to wait for that stuff to be like tested and solid.
Totally.
And,
but I think that we're actually getting to a point now this is another factor of this, a little bit of, I guess you could call it a slowing down in terms of new features, but pretty soon a lot of the new stuff will be in LTS, right? Like the new tools, most of the visual tools, shader graph, visual effects graph, all that stuff will be into LTS pretty soon, which I think is cool. So I'm pretty excited to see that, and also like the comments and the reactions and stuff on Twitter that I'm seeing. People seem generally, really positive and supportive of it as a direction. So I feel like that's cool. It's like represents Unity listening, and so I'm pretty psyched to see that. I mean, so you mentioned, so you've got Skate Story on. You brought it up to 19.4.
Yeah.
So what was the thing that motivated you to move it to 19.4? Was there something that you wanted or needed?
Well, I started it on, I think, 19.3.
Okay.
So
it
it's not a
jump.
big move.
Right.
Yeah. Zarvat was on 2017.
Right.
So that was just sitting there. And then for Skate Story, I started it literally like a year ago.
Yeah.
So that was 2019.3, or maybe it was like 2019.2.9 or whatever.
Yeah.
So moving it through that was not a pain.
Cool. I mean, that's also good, because I know that in the past has been a thing. That moving through versions could be difficult. So that's cool to hear that wasn't such a difficult process. So I guess I'm kind of curious. I've been following the progress on Twitter. We actually haven't talked about Skate Story in a while. How are you? How are you feeling? Where are you at, kind of in the process, mentally, creatively, technically?
Yeah,
how's it going?
So my first commit was September 22nd, 2019.
Oh shit!
So the birthday, like the literal birthday, like some people say, like, oh yeah, my game came out. It's my game's birthday, but like your game wasn't born on that day, was it? Like,
yeah.
This was born on September 22nd, like my first commit on GitHub.
Amazing.
And no, I mean, it's definitely come a long way. I started the Twitter, I think, in January 6, 2020 or something like that. and it's grown to like 7,000 followers,
Sick.
which is quite amazing.
I mean, super fast
Yeah.
growth, I mean, I know you were
Yeah.
working hard. I mean, maybe let's talk about that a little bit, because I know that that's something, I feel like that's become a little bit of a standard piece of advice for indie developers, right? It's like make GIFs of your game or like little GIF-like short videos and post them to Twitter. And that was something that kind of a playbook that you followed, and seems like it's worked pretty damn well.
Yeah, I mean, I will note that the game I'm making, like Skate Story, is like inherently extremely visual.
Yes.
Like, I think if I were making like a 6X strategy game, like a strategy simulator game, it's going to be hard to post GIFs and get them retweeted and such,
Yeah.
Like, Skate Story is very action-oriented, visual, and to be honest, like, I was kind of designing the game in my head based on, I would have these, like, in a way, GIFs in my head, like 4-second clips of like, oh, the skateboard's like this, and it's like the camera, and then, you ollie over this barrel, that feels really cool, and that's, in a way, it's perfect because skateboarding is that. Skateboarding, like, you watch any skate video, it's just like 20 minutes of 5 to 10 second clips.
Yeah.
And that cut to amazing music, and I just love watching skate videos, and I wanted to make a game that resembled it as much as possible.
I think that's super duper interesting, and I think that this is an interesting, in terms of people looking to kind of get take action or get an idea of something that they can take away from this. I think that thinking about, for whatever reason, what comes to mind when you say that, saying, I was kind of thinking about these visual moments and obviously the way those would translate. It reminds me of Ooblets, which has been a kind of an indie sensation over the past couple of years. And they talked quite a bit about how they were doing this really, really, their production, it's obviously just the two of them, right? But their production was like geared towards that. They're like, we wanted to make everything visual we could, basically, to be able to post it online.
Yeah.
And really thinking about, okay, how is our production going to actually output visual moments for social, and with that being that really integrated part of the marketing. It sounds a little bit like you were thinking similarly.
For sure. I think marketing through social media is obviously one of the biggest forms of advertising nowadays. And if you're able to work that into your creation process, like try to integrate it in, then you kind of get, a lot of bang for your buck, right?
Yeah.
You're making your game, you just post some videos of your game, people like the way it looks and start following you and such. It's no cakewalk though. Like, I think for the first couple of months, I was at maybe like 100 followers.
Yeah.
I got up to like maybe 101 or something like that after the first 3 months.
Yeah.
But I sort of, kind of got my footing. I figured out which tweets were getting slightly more likes. Like, oh, this one got like 30 likes.
Yeah.
Why is that? Versus this one only got like 2 likes.
Yeah.
Not sure why. And then kind of reiterating that. So, and then eventually one of my tweets went somewhat viral, I guess, because somebody who had a lot of followers, Natalie Clayton, writer for RPS, wrote about it. And then that boosted my followers like overnight to 300. So,
see, I mean, that's also, I think, really interesting. And I think that in terms of thinking about how to kind of turn that into something tactical, just it's funny, I was just watching a video by another YouTuber, Jonas Tiroler, who's a YouTuber here in Berlin, who worked on Islanders and a bunch of other stuff, really great content creator. And he was saying, every action is a lottery ticket, right? Everything that you do has a chance to pop. And I think that's true in this context, right? It's like you're just doing it, repeating. And then one of those for whatever reason, right? And as you yourself say, like you don't really know what's going to hit. You know what I mean? Like it's like you're like, oh, I think this is doing better than the other. You have numbers that you can look at, but like you don't know. And then you do something, and then somebody kind of lifts it to the next level, and then it starts to generate some momentum. I think that's pretty interesting, and
it's kind of fun. I mean, it's kind of like an idle game. Just like trying to grow the number of followers, right?
Clicking.
I mean, it is, right?
Clicking
like
on Twitter, posting.
I mean, kind of.
Yeah.
I actually had a rule for myself for the first maybe like 4 months or 5 months. I was like, I'm going to post a GIF every single day.
Yeah.
Just to like really try to get this thing going. I've slowed down since then.
Yeah.
Like I got a little sick, and then the whole coronavirus scare, and then I was, things happened that made me slow down a little bit more.
Yeah, totally.
But it was actually very, very helpful to post a GIF every single day.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I wasn't making a GIF every day. I was sort of like setting up maybe 4 or 5 of them and then scattering them throughout.
Yeah.
But I would recommend it to anyone who's trying to follow this strategy. It's just make a schedule that you're just gonna do.
Yeah.
And keep buying lottery tickets, right? Like
yeah, exactly. Like you don't know, one of those might hit. I remember talking to Andre Cardoso from Mix and Jam, and he had a similar experience with growing his Mix and Jam channel. That he was kind of doing it. It was small, the content was really good, but then I think it was somebody from Guerrilla Games or some AAA dev saw one of the things, shared it, and then like literally overnight it was like I forget, he got like 5,000 followers or some like crazy spike, literally off one share, and then it just kind of took off.
Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, this is going to sound a little dramatic, but kind of changed his life. Like he was over there in Brazil doing his thing without a lot of big network or attention, and then he started doing the content, and then it just kind of got recognized, and he got a lot more so it's a thing. I think it's something I think people, I mean, maybe you can overestimate what it's going to do, and I don't think it's it's not the only thing you should be doing, right? But I think if it's a low enough effort and high enough potential, there's a very high ceiling on how well it can go if you get something that hits and catches and gains attention. So it's there's a big upside, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. So you've been working on the game for a year now. I mean, it's looking great, right, from what we can see.
Thanks.
Where are you at? What are you working on now?
Well, I'm still working on the game. And I mean, from a nuts and bolts perspective, I'm like trying to get to a full vertical slice.
Okay.
So it's pretty common in like game production, right? To start with pre-production, then an alpha, not an alpha, then like maybe like a pre-alpha, which is kind of like a proof of concept. Some people call it that. And then you try to get to a vertical slice. So, and after vertical slice, you like make an alpha, which is like the full game, then the beta, which is kind of the full game, but somewhat polished, and then you have a gold master and you ship it. So vertical slice is, it's kind of like the layers of a cake. If like your game is like a delicious cake, it's got all these different layers of, gameplay and exploration and items and crafting, whatever stuff that you decided to put in your cake. Some games have 20 layers and some games have 5 layers. So my game has, pretend I scoped it out and it has 6 layers. So vertical slice is like you take a slice of that cake, but you want to sample every single layer. It's not the whole cake, but it's a very thin slice of that cake. So I want to show at least a little bit of every part of the game. So you should be able to do ollies, do kick flips, do some grinds. People have been really asking for that. Do some slides, and also show what the story of the game is like. The world map, the currency system, some of the cutscenes. So just like here's one level of the game.
That's cool. So, and you're trying to get that to a relatively complete feeling state in the vertical slice, right? That it's that it's not all of the content, but that part of it should, to some extent, look like, a finished game.
Yeah, like it should to some extent be like shippable, right? Like someone should look at it and be like, "Oh, this is like it's like I bought a game and I'm playing it," right? Obviously, because the game's still in development, it's subject to change. It could look drastically better later on. Think of it like you're trying to make a E3 demo.
Yeah, like a one-level demo.
Yeah, exactly.
And do you have what's the rationale for taking that approach as opposed to trying to make a less polished, larger slice of a game? Like, why focus on a vertical slice as opposed to?
So I don't think it's a rather. After the vertical slice, the plan is to go to alpha, which is the whole game, right? Yeah. So the whole game gray boxed out, pretty much. Vertical slice is sort of like, okay, well, this is what the game actually is. It's like you fill in one part of the painting and you're like, this is the detail, this is the style, this is what the rest of the game should look like as a reference. So it's kind of like just getting to a point where you can show it to someone else or you can play it yourself. Or the vertical slice doesn't even have to be long. It could be 5 minutes. Yeah. Could be 2 minutes, I bet the game Minute, the vertical slice was a minute, Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably 2 minutes, but, it's, it doesn't have to be long. So my vertical slice, I'm aiming for about 10 to 20 minutes.
Okay.
Which is, you sit down, you play a level. It might be a train ride kind of thing. You finish the level, you're like, and hopefully you're like, this is awesome, and then I just build 9 more of those levels. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I think that there's a lot of value to that, from the perspective of it's forcing you into some decision making around details, right? There won't be, once you've got a vertical slice that feels like a finished game, there shouldn't be any major systemic changes, or maybe things always change.
I mean, there might be some,
yeah,
but you want to get a first draft, right? Yeah. Like you want to get like, this is going into the game. It kind of puts like it prints it, right? You're like, okay, this is it, and then it helps the creative process because it kind of boxes it. You're just kind of like, well, now I can't. This is kind of what I have right now. I'm not going to have like this 500 item, skate wheel crafting system where you can,
Yeah.
So it kind of just boxes it around, and it also gives you some perspective, right? It's kind of like, well, this is the game. Like this 20 minutes is the game, and this might be the only 20 minutes someone plays,
Right.
And hopefully this is fun enough that they want more of this.
That they want to go further. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you planning to try to take that now I don't even know, in this world of lockdown and everything that we're in, whether shows will be a thing or what? I'm guessing not probably in the next immediate future, right?
Probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thinking about doing a demo or showing it to, playtesters, publishers.
Right. Definitely playtesters. I think for testing, having a playable slice is super important.
Yeah.
Also for publishers, for anybody who wants to check out the game, in a way you need a playable slice, no matter what. It's like, what else are you going to play? Just like look at the trailers,
Right.
Yeah. So having a playable slice, and then having an alpha, right? So the idea is like you have the whole game and it's all really ugly, but you have this one level that's like gorgeous.
And that you can be like, look at this, and then imagine the rest of it like that.
Exactly. Yeah. And then you spend the next year building out the rest of the game, right? And it could still be jank. Like the vertical slice doesn't have to be like this is a finished game. This is a finished demo that you ship. You know, maybe it'll have some bugs and stuff like that because you're still building the game, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily going to that kind of final level of polish, but it should be not look enough like the final that you can kind of be like, yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, you should be able to play it and be like, okay, maybe this is like a janky version of the final game.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. With some bugs and some things that may change. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. No, I think that's cool. I mean, I think that it's a good... I think also there's been an interesting thing now, which we see on Steam, where demos are kind of coming back.
Oh, yeah, demos.
Which was kind of not a thing, but I don't actually totally understand this, but somehow I guess that it gives you people are doing free demos on Steam and they're promoting them as basically separate titles. And I think this is maybe partly because Steam has become more open and less controlled.
Right.
And so people can be like, yeah, I'm releasing a free game, which is called Skate Story, the Prologue, you know?
Yeah.
I've seen a bunch of people doing Prologue, this and that, and they're free. And then that's effectively a kind
demo.
of it's like a marketing
I like
asset.
that idea.
Yeah.
I think it's cool. Night in the Woods and Kentucky Route Zero kind of did stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think it's sick.
Yeah, that's true. I'd forgotten that, and that was actually a while ago.
Yeah, like the Night in the Woods released like this free demo, like Lost Constellation or something.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
I loved it. I was like, this is great. Now I really like. I was interested in the full game, but I played the demo and I was like, this is cool.
Yeah,
and I mean, it's a lot of work because their demo was entirely separate, right? It's like a prologue in a way.
Yeah. Right. It's not like the first level of the game. It's like actually. Yeah, like a unique
I mean, in a
piece
way,
of content.
that is a really great way of making a vertical slice. Then you have, I mean, if you can, in a way, afford it to make extra content,
right? Like
a whole level just to give away. But it's pretty smart.
Yeah, it seems to be kind of a thing, and I don't totally get the kind of systemic dynamics that are causing it to be like viable business-wise, but I think it's basically that the free game gets the same visibility window on Steam, so it's basically giving you 2 rounds of algorithmic Steam visibility, you know, which is obviously a huge factor for a lot of people on Steam. And so then it's it's just another kind of go through the washing machine.
Yeah. I think it also works more for narrative-driven games.
That's interesting. Yeah.
If you have a systemic game, you can't really release Kerbal Space Program Prologue, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like here's 4 spaceship parts. You're like,
Yeah, you're like, this isn't fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I know. No, it's very true. Like deep systemic games will probably not benefit under that kind of a environment. It's interesting. This is a total diversion, but it's on the top of my mind. I've been playing Factorio. Have you ever played this?
Oh yeah.
Bro, I'm at my current factory. I'm at like 80 hours. Like I've really been sucked into it, and which is funny because actually I kind of went through like game playing drought. I really there wasn't a lot that was really grabbing my attention and inspiring me. Definitely not a lot of the stuff that was kind of popular. Everybody's hyping about Fall Guys right now. I played Fall Guys. I see the appeal, and I definitely am like, wow, that must have been technically hard to achieve with network physics for 100 people. I'm impressed, and definitely congrats to Devolver. And I know that people at Unity are really happy that it's been so successful, but people were like, wow. And I kind of played it and I was like, yeah, this is good, but I'm not going to spend hours and hours playing this. But Factorio, for whatever reason, kind of got me, and I actually had played it a bunch. I don't know. I think I bought it a year ago, played it for, 10 hours or something, got into it, but then hit there's a few things that are kind of difficulty cliffs, like making the trains work, and there's a bunch of stuff that's really hard to do, and I kind of bounced off it, and then I came back this summer because I was on vacation, and I kind of broke through that difficulty curve, and then just was like, just like got super sucked in. It's a phenomenal game. It's really like it's kind of like a visual programming environment, which is like, it's funny because you go on the Factorio Reddit and there's like, it's just like all engineers, like literal real engineers all talking to each other. Like it's really, it's interesting,
it's engineering fantasy.
Yeah, it is. It's this automation fantasy. That's really what it's about. It's that this thing that you build this system and it's automating and you're optimizing it. You're making the paths shorter and refining your conveyor belts and more throughput. And it's really funny, but it scratches some super itch for me. And one of the things that I was thinking about, and this is actually maybe a way to this is actually a big battle in my mind right now. So I'm thinking about my space game. I posted a devlog on the channel that some people have seen, and this was actually, referencing another conversation that you and I had. Like, I got super stuck and blocked, and I was really didn't know where to go with it. And then we talked about it, and you kind of suggested, hey, maybe kind of bring this idle incremental clicker game element to the fore, which I grabbed a hold of and I really like and got kind of inspired by. But now I'm totally fighting the battle of being like, it's an idle game, but there's all these complicated mechanics. Like, I'm like
things on top.
Yeah, like tons of complicated cargo and energy, and you're managing all this. Like, and I'm like, I'm really battling
Scope
this right
creep.
now. Scope, bro. I'm like fighting Scope with a flamethrower and losing. Like, it's a really. I mean, so this is like a million things to say about this, but one thing that I think is interesting and that I kind of want to like talk a little bit more about is, I feel like as game developers, a lot of us underestimate game design. We kind of, a lot of people think, oh, I don't know how to program or do art, but I could do game design because I love to play games.
I thought that. Yeah,
me too.
I was like, oh, game designers, we don't need them. I'm a programmer. I could do all that. I can do the art. Of course I could design the game. And then now I'm like, oh God.
Bro, it's hard. Game design
the hardest part.
Is hard.
I think it is the hardest part of game development is game design.
Bro, it's so fucking hard. And like and then of course I set myself like a game design super problem in the sense that so there's two things. One, I mean, the thing that's good about the idea of making it more like an idle game is that is a format, right?
Yeah.
And this was something it's a genre, right? So it's like, and this is, I think, one of the reasons that maybe people think that game design is easy is because they're like, I know the genre, I know Mario, and I can take Mario and I can put time manipulation in it, and now I've got chocolate and peanut butter, and I've made something new and good, right? And that is a valid approach, right? But so that's something I would kind of say, this is like advice I'm trying to give myself, and I would give to anybody else, is like, if you're a beginner game designer, regardless of your skills in other disciplines, is definitely like try to copy as much as you can, right? Because there may be some fundamentals there that you can just build on top of. For me, I'm really struggling with this, just trying to blow the scope. Like, I want to put all this complicated mechanics on top of it, and every time I try to like scale it back, I just keep adding more crap. And so, one of the things I've been doing is I kind of I stopped programming, right? Because I had a period of like a couple months where I was just like programming, having fun programming, which obviously I like to do and is fun. But then I kind of realized, I was like, wait, there's like a bunch of unsolved problems that writing code is not going to fix, conceptual problems, And so now I'm trying to be like, okay, I'm doing everything on paper. And I started using this tool called Nuclino, which I actually really like. I don't know if you ever heard of this. It's I think they're a startup here in Europe, but it's a Google Docs like thing, but you've got these they call them clusters, which are like a node, and then you put topics underneath. You can view it as a list or like a Trello style board. And then the fun part is that it does this. There's this graph view, so you can see it as a graph of like connected bubbles. It's really nice. So I've been using that to build a kind of a game design document and doing everything, trying to just write everything out. And I also started reading this book, which I find to be really great so far, which I'm just going to look at my phone to get the title. It's Advanced Game Design, a Systems Approach by Michael Sellers, which I think is relatively new. And somewhere I heard about it, and then I looked at the reviews on Amazon, and I saw that Ralph Koster, who's a very smart game designer, left like this 5-star review and was like, this is required reading. And I do find it to be really, really good, talking about system thinking as it relates to game design. It's like exactly what I needed. So I'm like reading that, trying to write all this documentation, and trying to like actually have a game design before I go and sit there and try to like write a lot more code or prototype. You know, but it's
planning phase. Yeah, it's really important.
I think so, and it's like painful. It's like, and I guess the thing I'm struggling with is in this planning phase. The fun part is to add a bunch of stuff, you know. Yeah. So I'm like adding stuff, and then I keep trying to be like, okay, but let's put that at the bottom of the list. What's the MVP version of this? You know. Yeah.
I mean, one thing to note that I've been starting to realize is like you don't need that much stuff for it to be fun. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, that's sort of the reason why I recommended the clicker genre to you. Yeah. It's like, you don't need, it's just one currency. And then to get the currency, you could just click. All right. Yeah. And then to get more faster, you like buy stuff. That's it. Like, that is it. Like, you look at cookie clickers, like, you just click and then you buy some stuff. There's some cooler little mechanics later on, but, like, for the first, like, 3 hours, there are no more mechanics, right? It's like you upgrade stuff, you buy stuff, and that's it, you know? Yeah. And it's still so engrossing, right?
I know. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I went and played a bunch of clicker games because we were talking about it. I played Andrew's Cell to Singularity, which is great, and I actually want to get him on
amazing game.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. Really, I really like the music and the art. The art is quite simple, but it really works, and it all comes together in a really nice package. And they are hitting what I think is a good balance of being commercial with there are plenty of prompts to watch rewarded ads and opportunities for them to generate revenue, but it's not in a annoying way. I played this game Idle Miner, which is which my kids play and they love, and it's I think pretty popular, and it's good. It's actually the core of it is a good game, and I probably will end up copying it somewhat heavily in the sense that it's an idle game, but you have this mine that goes down vertically, and then you have hitting my mic. The mine goes down vertically, and then you have these horizontal mine shafts, and you have to open them up, and then there's little guys that actually walk back and forth, and the resources only get dropped off when the little miner gets to the end. So there's this whole it has to move over here, and then it has to get put in the elevator that goes up and down, and then it has to get carried to the goal at the top. So if you don't have capacity in your elevator, like your guy could be mining really fast, but if there's no capacity in the elevator, it bottlenecks. So there's this little bit of automation optimization going on, and they also have this very smart thing where there are these event mines that open up with it's the shark mine, and it's just like another mine that you start from scratch, so that there's this parallel thing going on. This is the thing that I want to try to build into the space game that I think some idle games miss, and actually Cell to Singularity does it too, where there's this dinosaur side game where there are moments in the idle game where there's nothing to do, And so having opportunities to cycle through activities, having like
Right.
multiple screens, or whether it's different mines or little mini games or something,
Yeah.
is something that I'm thinking about, that I think will be cool. But the thing about so Idle Miner, I think, has a good design. It's partly something I want to emulate, but then it's also opening up this whole me
Right.
wanting to like turn it into Factorio, which is like
Right. Yeah.
which is dangerous. But the thing that they do terribly, I think it's probably commercially successful for them, but it's so spammy with ads and prompts to buy, and it's really brutal how
monetized
how
it is.
monetized. It's brutally monetized. It's like it really. I had to stop playing. I was like, it's got all these blinking notifications on the main screen that you can't clear.
Right.
That are just like monetization, just like constantly flashing monetization notifications. That I was like, fuck this. But there is a good game loop there. And then I played that, and then I played also Space Plan, which I had played years ago, and I brought it back and played it again. It's great, really stylish, and I mean that's a great example of a really simple. It's a literal clicker game. He really didn't. There's a narrative. Well, it's a clicker plus narrative. That's what he did.
Right.
There's a basically text-based narrative, which is actually really effective. It's like funny, and there's a little cutscene. There's like a key moment in the game. There's a really funny little cutscene that happens, and but it's a kind of a core clicker game.
That's probably a great example of like, in a way, how little you need for the MVP.
Yeah.
And like, sometimes I spin around in circles and I'm just like, oh man, I need all this stuff to make it fun, But at the end of the day, it's like, in my game, it's kind of fun to just, I just have to really commit to myself. It's fun to just skate down the street. That's the MVP. You skate down the street.
If that feels good, which, I think it's like, and this is something I'm like learning about in this game design book. It's like all these, you have like the little microsecond to second loop, right? Which is like that main activity that you play. If it's a shooter game, it's just like literally shooting enemies. That's the kind of core loop, right? And if that's fun, you're kind of good, and then you can build more structure around it, right? But then
clicker games
doesn't
like
work.
All structure. That's the craziest part. Like
totally,
it's kind of like distilled structure. It's like you click, and then you have enough clicks to do something that makes you click faster. And then something that clicks for you, and then something that makes the thing that clicks for you faster. It's like so beautiful.
What's crazy about clicker games that I've learned in my research, and that is really beautiful and that's interesting, is that it's literally, there's this one number in the clicker framework, which is 0.15. It's a 15% increase in cost.
Interesting.
That's it.
Huh.
And you can tweak that, and maybe you could have spikes or uneven variance in the cost increase, but it's literally it's almost like a procedurally generated game in the sense that it's like you literally set the cost increase, so you have to define the upgrades and the buildings and the all the things that are like the kind of content of the game, but the core of the game is if I buy a building for 100 and then I buy it again, the next time it costs 115, and that's the curve that you're climbing, and then it's like, well, I already bought 3 buildings, so I shouldn't buy a building, now I should buy a car or whatever the units are. And it's basically about rotating through those upgrades in a way that you're spending your resources effectively.
Right.
But it's kind of what's interesting about it from a game design perspective is that it's kind of this machine that you can set loose and players can play against, and there can be these emergent the experience is relatively emergent, right? There's this kind of field of mathematics that gets generated that the player kind of swims around in, but you're not authoring. It's this very indirect form of authoring, which I think is very interesting and is very much appeals to my, brain brain.
Factorio brain.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that kind of system-y kind of thing. I don't know, for whatever reason, I just cannot resist the urge to complicate it and to be like, to put in all these other things. Like, that there's I mean, honestly, there's a couple things that I think I'm going to settle on, that like the mining droids have a cargo capacity and a battery life, and that those run out, and those are throttles on, those are things that you have to optimize, which I think is like what Idle Miner has done with the core is this incremental activity, but then there are bottlenecks, and you have to your choice, because the thing I don't like about the pure clicker, like I played Adventure Capitalist, which is quite popular. Also free on Steam, which is interesting. Like,
probably in-app purchases.
I think there is some, or there's maybe a Patreon or something. But I was like, wow, you guys are free on Steam. Interesting.
I think Cell to Singularity is also free on Steam.
Is it? That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, that's interesting. And But yeah, Adventure Capitalist I wasn't as much of a fan of, because it is more of it's just pure.
Right, it's a pure clicker.
It's a pure clicker. There really isn't. Right. And so your moment to moment, once you have a little bit of a grasp, but there's not a lot of stuff complexifying the math. So like once you have a little bit of a grasp of like, you're like, well, I could buy one of these or two of those,
Yeah.
And you
can
just
like, yeah.
It gets a little more linear and like it's kind of clear, and so that like lost me pretty quickly. So that's what I'm
little
wrestling
thing
with.
That you want there, right? Like you don't want just like a pure clicker, obviously.
Yeah.
You want that little twist that makes it feel like you're optimizing, you're automating.
That's what I'm looking for, and little being the key there, right? The littlest twist that I can come up with,
I mean, that's kind of how art is made, right? Like you take something great and you kind of remix it a little bit. Like, because if you remix everything, you're risking a lot.
Right. It's just a different thing. It's not a hamburger anymore, right? It's like if you take a hamburger and you take away the patty and the bun, it's not a hamburger.
People would be like, "What the hell is this?" Like,
it's a salad. It's like you take a hamburger and you put an egg on it, and now it's a
Actually,
an egg burger.
That's a really great analogy. It's like if you open a hamburger shop, like there's a box that you want to make in a hamburger, but if you stray so far from it, where you're like, "Oh, I want to put like spaghetti in the hamburger.
Yeah.
And I want to put sparkling water in the hamburger." It's kind of like, well, it's maybe
really
a little too far.
Anymore.
But you take a regular hamburger, but you're like, all right, but I'm going to put a little horseradish in there.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like little squirt of lemon.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa.
Wow. Man, there's a place. Sadly, it closed down and got replaced by like a more conventional Asian restaurant that's pretty close to where I live here in Berlin. That was doing these Asian bao burgers, and it was like two bao buns.
Huh.
But what was crazy about it, and I think it was like too much for the Germans. Like it was. Shout out to all you Germans, I love you. It was so much stuff. It was like huge and like gnarly and like it was like Asian pickles.
An American style.
It was pretty American. Yeah, it was like pow, like really in your face kind of a sandwich. I used to love it, but like it was. I could only go get like I remember I like helped my friend move all day. And I was like exhausted and super hungry, and then I went and ate this like giant.
I want 5,000 calories.
Yeah, I was like, bah! Like it was mega. That was amazing. Yeah. But yeah, sadly it got replaced by like a basic sushi noodle place because it was too much.
I mean, maybe like honestly, like that sounds great. Like a kind of like a bao burger, but different, right?
Bro,
it's like kind of Americanized.
It was really good.
I mean, that's kind of a good case study, and like they changed too much. They made it too big.
They did. That's exactly what happened. They made it too big, and it was too crazy. I'm just keeping an eye on the time, so we don't end up talking for 2 hours. I think they made it was like too crazy, too intense. It was the combination of, it wasn't just they changed the flavor, but they made it so big.
Yeah.
It was like overwhelming, you know?
Right. It's kind of like, oh, I just wanted a Bao burger.
I just wanted like a burger.
Why is this a monster?
It's like a sandwich, you know, and this was like a monster, like a giant entree all in a bun. So.
I mean, if they started a restaurant where like, oh yeah, our burgers are monsters.
Right. If it was Monster Burger and that was the theme, right? It was like these triple-decker burgers, you could be like, okay, well, I'm going to go get a Monster Burger. I'm expecting to get this giant mountain. Yeah. So that was, so it didn't work out for them. But
don't make a Bao Monster Burger space game, Matt.
Oh, bro, it's so I'm really wrestling with it. I'm trying to write it down. I'm trying to wrestle with it on paper instead of wrestling with it in code, which is a little bit what I was doing before. I was starting to prototype, and then I just kind of realized I was like, the way this is, it's I don't know. Maybe a paper prototype would have been better. I don't really know how to do that very well. This goes back to me being like an inexperienced game designer. You know, some things you can kind of bang up a gray box of it, right? Like you're talking about gray boxing your levels. Yeah. You can kind of bang up a gray box and you can kind of feel, this feels good. We can do a grind, whatever. We can grind along this, and you get a feeling. With this, it was like...
Yeah, systems games.
I was like, how do I prototype this? I started, and then I just kind of was like, whoa, you know, and felt overwhelmed and needed to step back.
Do you know this guy, Arthur Danskin?
No,
Have you ever met him?
No,
he made this game called Reassembly. He's actually also part of Gumbo. And he's working on this other game right now. And he's kind of running into the same problem where he has a lot of stuff. It's also a space game.
I think I met him actually at Gumbo.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's absolutely brilliant.
He's like writing it in C++, right? It's like his own thing.
Not even Unity.
I was like, whoa. Okay.
He has like a million things in his game. Like you can make Dyson spheres and cryo generators. You can zoom into like individual asteroids and send miners there. And he's struggling with a similar problem in that he's like, okay, well, what? Like, what? How do I piece this thing together? Like, this makes no sense. You know, how do I even prototype this thing? Right?
Yeah.
How do I make a game loop? He kind of has all these puzzle pieces on the floor.
Yeah.
And what he's actually been doing, which seems to be helping, is like just getting these very specific goals. Like, I remember we were talking. He's like, okay, well, I think one great goal is to build a Dyson sphere. So a Dyson sphere is like it's like the singularity of energy, right? You build like solar panels around the sun.
Yeah.
And it's super cool. Yeah.
It's kind of like totalitarian science horror, but also like kind of amazing. Yeah.
And like first he just literally had a button that's like build Dyson sphere, and you click the button and it builds a Dyson sphere, and you're like, oh, done. And then it's like, okay, well, what if you had to build each solar panel? Right? Maybe you need 1 million solar panels, or maybe for now it's like 1,000 solar panels.
Yeah.
So now you click build solar panel. You have to click that 1,000 times, right? And then the Dyson sphere is finished, right? And then it's like, okay, well, what if you can build a robot that builds solar panels?
Okay.
And what if you need resources to build? So it's kind of like, in a way, working backwards.
That's interesting.
You know?
That's interesting. Yeah. I do think, well, this is also something that I'm thinking about. I think in this idea of goals, this is something that I'm wrestling with, like with this as like I was thinking about Animal Crossing. Animal Crossing really, the goal is like, I guess a kind of a self-expression thing, but there's not even
there's kind of the mortgage thing.
Paying off the mortgage.
Yeah. That's kind of the main story of Animal Crossing.
That's true. I would say that's a good point. That's probably the central, visible goal. Like in Factorio, there's this goal of you climb the tech tree and then you launch a rocket. You know,
right?
Well, I guess to get you off the planet or something. But of course, it's a kind of a symbolic goal, right? It's like climb the tech tree, launch the rocket, and then theoretically you could be like, I did it. You know?
Yeah, you win.
You win, right? And I think that is good to have. And that's something I'm thinking, like, I have no idea what that is for this game. Like, so I'm trying to think about that. And I think that kind of connects to what you're talking about with Arthur and his space game is like, okay, building a dice. And then also one of the things that I love about playing Factorio is, and this is also true for like games like Minecraft, is there's like always things to do. Because it's self-directed, and then and it actually gets like more intense as you get deeper into the game because your factory gets bigger, and then you're like, oh, I need to fix the furnaces, and you like run over to the furnaces, fix the furnaces, and you're like, oh, but now the stone coming into the furnaces is not really enough throughput. Oh, okay, let's go look at that. The train that brings the stone needs to go faster, and there's always like a little thread to tug on. And that kind of sets off a little cascade of goals, and little intermediate, little small goals. You're like, oh, I need to fix these two machines. They're misaligned. And then, but now that that's fixed, I can see that there's this other problem, and it just, and then 10 hours have gone by. Really, it's good. This is one of the few games where I have that experience of like, I like look at my watch and I'm like, whoa, I forgot to eat. Like, I just was building my gigafactory. But that is a really good feeling. The thing I hate in games, and it makes me just immediately stop playing a game, is getting stuck. Getting frustrated. Some story game. They like want me to have some item.
Where do I go?
I don't have it, and I'm like, I just hate that. And there's some gate condition that I haven't fulfilled. I need to backtrack, and I'm just like, this is why I don't like Metroidvania games. It's like a genre about backtracking. Like, get me out of here. Which is so funny because obviously the passionate lovers of Metroidvania.
It's a huge genre. Yeah,
it's a beloved genre. And I get it, right? But it's just like I hate backtracking. What I hate about it is it's uncertain, right? You like end up going all the way back to the beginning of the level, and you're like, nope, I didn't find it. You go all the way back through. It's just like, whoa.
I mean, it's sort of like an exploration, kind of like adventure game type thing, right? It's kind of like a puzzle, action, adventure, exploration genre. Yeah. And maybe, is it like the puzzle? I mean, no, you probably like the puzzle element, right?
Sure. Yeah, that's probably not the problem.
Factorio has a lot of puzzle element. It's maybe the exploration element that you're less keen on.
Maybe.
You're just like, well, I already explored it. I want to tick a box.
I want to go. I want to go do something else. I want to see something new. I don't want to go look at the same content again.
Yeah, no, that's very valid. I think people have different thresholds. Some people love diving deep into one thing.
Yeah.
And like replaying it and re-exploring it.
Digging into all the corners and finding secrets and stuff.
Yeah, like hidden object games. I cannot play hidden object games.
Bro, that's a genre that, I know. Like, literally just like, whoa.
Yeah, but it's like a very popular genre.
It's true. Yeah. No, it's totally true. And, that's it. It's true. I mean, I think that there are games that do that in a way. There's a way to do that I find really satisfying, that Metroidvania type. I mean, this is different, but is... and really, it's funny because I only really find it in the games of From Software, the Souls games, which I don't have a lot of background with. But that looping back thing, where like I remember that first area in Dark Souls where you kind of climb all the way up this thing, and then you drop down, and then you're like back in an area that you were, but now you've opened this door that like connects it to this loop. Yeah, and that I love that. I think that's or like Bloodborne, where you like climb all the way up and around, and then you open the gate, and now that first street is connected right back to the main area, and you're like kind of reconnecting these parts of the space, and what felt like this super arduous journey, now you've made your way back around, opened the gate, and you're back at the beginning, but the beginning feels refreshed and changed.
Like, there's all this stuff I didn't know about before.
Yeah.
Right.
I love that, but that's kind of somehow a different...
Yeah, I mean, From Software are like masters of game design there, right? Like, it's the Dark Souls space really feels like a real sense of location.
So powerful. I feel like that's the star of those games. I feel like that's the fight. People talk about the fighting and the animation-based fighting and stuff, and I'm like, sure, but I mean, maybe that's just I also never really played. I probably played Bloodborne more than any of the others, and I think I got what did I get up to I forget. I got up to the boss, like the third or fourth boss, and then I was like, this is too hard. Or I just got frustrated. Well, that was the same thing. I got stuck.
Right.
I got to the boss.
Yeah.
I had a crazy experience with Bloodborne. It's a total tangent, but it's kind of funny. In Bloodborne, and this is such a crazy decision design-wise, you come down the stairs in the very first area, and the only way to get a weapon is you have to go into the dream world, and that's totally untutorialized. Like, you have access to it, but it's not clear that you have to go there. Right. And so you can just walk past it, and you go into this first room, and there's this werewolf, or maybe there's two, I think it's just one, and you literally have no weapon, so you have your fists, so you can punch this werewolf. Yeah. But it does like, one damage. So I really think I spent like an hour punching this werewolf. The werewolf. Dodge, I died like 50 times, dodge rolling, punching the werewolf, and finally punched the werewolf to death. And I was like, fuck. I was like, I heard these games. That was the first
enemy?
Yeah, literally. I was like, I heard these games were hard, but like, this is crazy. And then, of course, I got my, axe blade, switchblade thing, and I was like, oh my God, like, wow.
Like, oh, right.
It was such a crazy experience, but in a weirdly kind of like I don't know, it was interesting because I had the knowledge, I like had the community knowledge that like these games are very hard. Yeah. And so like you need to like get ready. Right. And I remember playing Dark Souls.
Going in.
Yeah, like I played Dark Souls a little bit and didn't get super far with it. Like there was also all these old weird bugs that it wouldn't run on Windows. It was like so old that couldn't be played. And they did a remaster. But and I remember getting to the first boss and be like, whoa, am I missing something here? And then I was like, oh no, they actually want me to like get into this window and then move back, like these little tiny windows where you can hit them and then you dodge back. And I was like, wow, okay, this is like hard and that's what they want me to do. Like, interesting. So I kind of had that in my mind. And then I was like, God damn it though. Like punching this werewolf, I was like sweating. I mean, it was memorable.
Yeah, for sure.
Memorable experience. And it was kind of crazy. Yeah. But yeah, I have a tremendous respect for those guys and the sense of place, especially in Bloodborne. It's like, that
the art
city
is beautiful. Yeah,
man, and the architecture. I feel like they're probably one of the few games that really the architecture really feels like. What's interesting too is that it's total nonsense architecture. It doesn't. There's no, you know what I mean? It's like just these weird towers.
It's game architecture.
It's pure game architecture, but somehow it feels so kind of
grounded.
Yeah. It's
so alive.
Exactly. Yeah. It's so there's something so rich about it, and the scale and the distance and the perspectives, and man, it's absolutely a masterpiece in that regard. And it's kind of interesting to me that so few. I mean, doing good architecture is hard, right? It's hard. There's so few games that get that, in my opinion. I don't know.
I mean, it's tough. I mean, I've been looking a lot at Mirror's Edge. I think that's a game that the architecture really is a star of the show because that's what parkour is all about. Right. It's just interaction with architecture. It's actually really interesting, their art style, right? Because it's so untextured in a way.
It's
right?
very reduced. Like,
it's very reduced.
Yeah.
It's like everything is very stark with like beautiful baked lighting.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, I mean, I've been looking at it a lot, and I love the game so much.
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful game, and also a very, very pure game in a way. You know, it's like very like just movement and
there's like no items. There's nothing. The guns feel like crap. Like in that game, like
very
you pick it up, you're like,
yeah,
this is like a 1990 gun. You know.
Yeah. It's interesting that they had guns in it at all. I feel like it would have been.
They shouldn't have had guns.
That's what I mean. I feel the same
Yeah.
way. It was like kind of like, we got a video game without a gun here? What are you guys doing? Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Add a gun.
yeah, just come on, just give her a gun, like a couple of little scenes where she's got a gun and she kills the guards. Like, come on, you know, like some like.
It's like, oh man, yeah.
You know,
but like
who was that? Was
Mirror's Edge for
Ubisoft
me?
did that? Was it
Actually, Dice.
Dice.
EA, yeah.
EA,
So
yeah,
Dice, they made like the Battlefield games.
Yep.
Battlefront, and then they made Mirror's Edge, which is,
It's
absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Very brave game.
Totally, and cool. Really cool to see the resources of AAA deployed against something so minimal and pure and stylish.
Well, it's interesting because Mirror's Edge 2, it's still very beautiful, still very cool. Kind of kept some of the soul of the original game.
Yeah.
There's something about it that makes it feel. It's almost like the original Portal was absolutely brilliant, and Portal 2 was even more brilliant. Mirror's Edge 2 felt like
went backwards a little.
A little backwards. It like made it less pure. It diluted it with some of that, like, you know, classic Ubisoft. Go up these towers and reach these things, and here's a float. There was a floating red line telling you exactly where to go in Mirror's Edge 2.
That kind of says it all, right? They slapped a bunch of video game stuff on it. Which is sad because in Mirror's Edge 1, I think that actually is a great game for anybody who kind of missed it from that generation in terms of pure level design and pure visual direction with that use of orange, the kind of
red.
red, orange features, you know what I mean, in the white environment, and which, you know, not super subtle, you know, but
it's like, here's the red thing, go on the red thing.
But, you know, more subtle than the glowing red line, and at least more kind of diegetic, you know what I mean? Like,
and it was brilliant. Like, I mean, in a way, it's super heavy-handed. It's like, here's a pipe. It's bright red.
Yeah,
it's red. Climb up the red pipe. You know,
totally.
But it worked really well, and I think that was a brilliant way that they solved that problem.
Totally. Yeah, no, I really remember being very inspired by that, and the I feel like it's interesting if you look at a lot of commercial AAA games. I think I talked about it on the last podcast. I played Destiny for a while. I've since sort of gotten bored, but they are very. It's the way they use their version of the red object is just bright. Whatever the bright part of the level is, just move towards it. Even if it totally looks impassable, it's like, just go to, if it's a dark corner, there's never going to be anything in there. Just go towards the light, you know? Which is funny because, like, light is a whole theme in Destiny. But, like, you know, it's interesting it's interesting because I think a lot of people who are not really thinking about level design as a craft will just internalize it subconsciously.
For sure.
But it's interesting to look at and to analyze, like, just the way that your brain is just like, well, I can see over there, so I'm going to go over there.
There's an amazing book, classic book by I think Jesse Schell or something.
Yep. Fellow my
Art of Game
namesake,
Design.
No relation.
He has this one little paragraph or chapter in the book about he worked as a game designer for, like, theme parks. I think it was like for Disney or something. And there was this one little room where you just kind of have to go up to this throne, like maybe it's for Aladdin or something.
Yeah.
It's like this beautiful throne room. But here's the problem. Like, the whole room was so beautiful that people would, like, enter the room. They would be like, whoa, this is great. And they look at everything. And then eventually maybe they would go to the throne.
Right.
And here's what he did. And it seems so silly and so reductive and, like, so obvious. He painted a red line from the entrance to the throne room, to just directly to the throne. And then magnetically, people would just walk to the throne.
Crazy.
And here's the funniest part. Like after they would obviously do focus testing and like figure this out, and they would ask the people like, "Oh, did you notice the red line?" Nobody notices the red line.
Yeah.
What red line?
Yeah. They're just like, no, I just decided to. Just felt
Right.
like I wanted to go over there.
Yeah, it's so these kinds of designing of spaces and designing to get people to experience the experience in a more pleasing way. Like some people, I think, label them tricks, which I think is true, right? It's like it's kind of a trick, right? It's cute, but also like it's like a tool. It's like you want to design it in a way where it flows, right? You have the line, and it's like, well, the point of the room for you to maximally enjoy this experience in Disney theme park is go up to the throne, and then the Sultan says something funny. You know,
totally.
But if you're just like, oh, this column over here.
You're going to spend like 15 minutes looking at the column and then be like, this sucks.
Right. Yeah. Then it's kind of like, well, you kind of missed the point here, right?
Yeah.
So the design kind of serves that.
I think that's a really, and it's about visual communication, right? It's about saying, let's lay this out or present this visually in such a way that I think there's an interesting thing there, right? It's not verbal. It's not a written sign saying, walk to the throne, right? It's like kind of guiding people in this nonverbal way.
Yeah.
Where and somehow that feels better, right? People
for sure.
feel more like they...
Because you have the agency. Like if you want to look at the column, you can. Like the classic level design thing would just be like, okay, well, let's just take out the columns because people kept looking at the columns.
Right.
Or let's put an invisible wall there. So you can't walk towards
can't see
columns. And then put a prompt and then put like a flashing,
Yeah, exactly.
white
it's like
orb.
a waypoint.
Waypoint.
Over the
and then
throne.
an arrow on the screen that says go to the throne.
Oh, man.
Which, I mean, for some games, you might want like go to the throne or whatever, but like imagine all like an Ubisoft game with all of those on with a mini map and like the character next to you also is like, let's go to the throne.
Hey, how about we go to the throne? No,
I mean,
it's funny. It's funny because I have there's some part of me that some kind of like purist, elitist, aesthete part of me that like hates that stuff. But honestly, like I was saying before, the thing probably that I hate even more than that is getting stuck.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's like, and I'm actually my actual reality of me playing games, especially those I have like probably lower patience for those kind of like story-like games, and so I'm just like I just want to go. Like don't stop me from going. I just want to go do the thing. You know, like, and so I kind of probably if I had to like. Yeah. Even though I might be like, no, I don't want a mini map. I'm going to figure it out. But then I'm like, I'm bored. I'm stuck. I'm frustrated.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm probably part of the target audience for that flashing icon.
Right. I mean, I guess in a way, it's like you got to pick your battles, right? I think for Ubisoft games, I kind of harped on it a little bit, but like to be honest, those games have so much stuff in them. Just like they're chock full. Like you can't. It's unrealistic to try to design everything perfectly because it's not a linear game. It's an open world, right?
I was going to say
it's linear.
This is the really big. Once you get into the world, it's like easy to make fun of Ubisoft and all their flashing icons, or any of these modern AAA games with all the flashing icons. But since we got into the kind of open world era of games,
kind of need it.
What the hell else are you going to do? It's like unless it's Minecraft where there is no quest. You probably have to go to one of those extremes, right? Where you say,
stuff.
Like here's where the guy is. You're trying to find the NPC who's going to give you the quest or let you solve the quest.
Yeah, and
you're just like wandering around and it's frustrated.
I mean, heck, like Breath of the Wild has. Like objectives, right? And then you use your Sheikah slate to like look at. a large glowing column showing you where shrines are, right? It's like, you know,
Yeah.
you need it. Like,
Yeah.
how else are you gonna navigate this big open world?
I gotta say that is my favorite. We should probably wrap up soon. Let me just check the time one more time. That is one of my favorite. Yeah, we've been going for more than an hour now. I started it late, so we'll wrap it up. But that is probably my favorite open world game.
It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it's like somehow you have the experience. Every little, and I think this is probably, a kind of masterclass. You see like a mountain. You're like, oh, I want to go get on top of that mountain, and you really feel like you decided to go climb that mountain for no reason. But then when you get to the top, there's like a Korok seed or
there's something there.
Some little cookies for you to find and feel like, oh,
awesome.
Yeah, like they thought
discovered
about
it.
me wanting to get to the top of this mountain, and it's like there for you, and you feel great. Mario Odyssey is also great that way. They have these like secrets, and you like wiggle yourself up to some corner of the map, and you think that you like tricked Nintendo, and then there's like a little star block there, It's like, oh man, wow,
Oh, Miyamoto,
yeah, it's really good.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's the. I don't know. I felt like Breath of the Wild. I mean, it's a big subject, right? We can talk about it more another time. But I feel like what they did well was that it was actually kind of in contrast to more of the traditional modern AAA open world games. Quite a empty environment.
Yes.
A very reduced.
It wasn't like chock full.
Yeah. But then I guess through just raw skill of level design, when you would get to some point where you felt like there was supposed to be something, it would pay off. You get to the top of the mountain always had something, or even if it was just a view, or there was like an experience waiting for you there.
Right. I mean, in a way, Breath of the Wild of any other open world game has the best contrast. Like, they have vast open expanses where there's literally nothing to do.
Yeah.
It kind of looks beautiful. I mean, every screenshot looks beautiful.
Yeah.
But it's like,
game. Yeah.
there's nothing here to do. Versus, like in Assassin's Creed or Watch Dogs, it's like, at any corner you can shoot an NPC or
kill
something.
Somebody or do something. Yeah,
kill
like
somebody.
Rich,
or,
dense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Collect a feather or something, which, is really great as well. Breath of the Wild somehow is able to really design, use the negative space.
Yes.
Right.
That's a great term. And at the risk of kind of orientalizing, I feel like that's a little bit of a Japanese, that great balance between minimal.
I mean, it is. Yeah.
It is. I mean, just
Americanism is like maximalist,
more
fill it to
stuff.
The brink.
We're gonna give you a giant hamburger. Yeah. No, it is. It's funny because I didn't really think about it, but when I think about it now, it was a lot like Shadow of the Colossus, actually, in that way.
Right.
Those big
There's
horse
nothing to
spaces,
do. Yeah. There's maybe some hidden lizards or stuff and an eagle, but that is it.
Yeah.
But
but what
Assassin's
a vibe.
Creed,
super vibe,
right?
Big empty spaces. You know who is doing that, and they pushed back their release date, but I think it's going to be really cool. Is Sable?
Sable.
The Mobius
that looks absolutely
game.
Gorgeous.
I'm like a
the
diehard
line
Mobius
art
fan.
3D.
Yeah, woo.
Oh my god,
it's sick. I think they made a deal with Microsoft, and they got more money, I'm guessing, and they decided to grow the scope and take longer.
I think they're published by Raw Fury.
I think they did maybe so, but I think they did I think it's Xbox exclusive.
Xbox Game Pass or something.
Game Pass, I don't know. There's some tie-in with Microsoft.
Yeah.
I'm assuming they got some money because then they pushed back they hired a bunch more people or a few more people at least.
Yeah, I can't wait for that game.
Sick. I'm almost jealous that I didn't think about it, but they had a brilliant it's funny, I actually did an interview with them for the Unity channel that ended up never coming out, but because the audio got messed up, which is super frustrating. the prototype for that game was a huge desert with like a big cube in the middle, and it was just this vibe of going through the desert towards this cube.
Yeah.
And that feeling of that big space and you know, open world game in a desert is smart as hell if you're an indie developer, right? Like it's big, you know, but it's like vast open world.
But there's
nothing
there.
A bunch of sand. You know? Like
just
super
one
smart.
Texture.
Yeah, exactly. One beautiful cell shaded texture, you know. Super smart, super cool. Yeah, I'm definitely looking. And now it's much richer and more complex. They've got all these buildings and places to visit and stuff, and a whole story, and it looks really cool. Well, cool. I think let's wrap it up there. But super fun to talk, as always. And for everybody who watched all the way to the end, thank you so much for being with us. We're going to keep doing more of these. I think the thing that Sam and I... Yeah, exactly. Here's your cookies for watching all the way to the end. We're going to keep doing more of these. I think we're going to try to do Sam and me maybe once a month, and then maybe some guests every other episode or something like that. We're still figuring it out, but we're going to keep going. We appreciate the response to the first 2 episodes. People seem to enjoy it and watch it. So we're super happy to hear that. Check out the audio if you want to listen on your phone. There is the audio on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, a bunch of them. It's on a bunch. Check your podcast platform and leave a comment if it's not on the platform you want it to be on. We can see if we can aggregate it or syndicate it there too. But yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, Sam.
Bye.
Bye.